Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. As promised, new video, new backdrop. We're all over the place right now, so I appreciate your patience. Today we're getting into a massive Xbox news drop. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been so much going on in the world of Xbox over this past weekend. Naturally, most of it dealing with the Activision Blizzard deal. We're going to get into a brand new agreement with PlayStation that Xbox has finally made, and what that means for the future of other Activision Blizzard titles over on PlayStation. Not only that, but we're going to be taking a look at Game Pass Core, which is this newly added tier replacing Games with Gold. After all this time, Xbox Live Gold is done, the end of an era. We're also going to be talking about the CMA doing CMA things and Call of Duty backwards compatibility on the rise right now, which could definitely have a major splash effect when this deal naturally closes. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, you're into Xbox news, information, all that stuff, consider subscribing. Apologies again about the kind of messy backdrop. I know that art is uneven. I know I look awful. I had an MRI today, so I was on like a sedative, so I'm a little bit woozy in the terms of you know my energy level, but I hope you'll all bear with me here as we transition into a new setup. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it at the top with, I think, the news that's been the talk of the town, and that's Xbox and PlayStation finally reaching a brand new agreement over Call of Duty. And this is the thing we've been hearing about for a while that PlayStation's been rejecting since about December of last year. So let's read what's changed and what really hasn't. First off, we're going to take a look at Phil Spencer's tweet announcing the news. He said, "We are pleased to announce that Microsoft and PlayStation have signed a binding agreement to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation following the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. We look forward to a future where players globally have more choice to play their favorite games." Meanwhile, Brad Smith follows this one up, saying, "From day one of this acquisition, we've been committed to addressing the concerns of regulators, platform and game developers, and consumers. Even after we cross the finish line for this deal's approval, we will remain focused on ensuring that Call of Duty remains available on more platforms and for more consumers than ever before." So, like I mentioned earlier, this is a Call of Duty deal that we believe has been offered in the past. Is it the same one that was offered, though? Well, The Verge actually has details on that, and then we'll discuss a bit more some of my thoughts on this. So, The Verge reports this: while Microsoft's initial announcement doesn't mention 10 years for Call of Duty on PlayStation, Carrie Perez, head of global communications at Xbox, confirmed the 10-year commitment to The Verge. Perez later confirmed to The Verge that the deal is only for Call of Duty, though. That makes the deal similar to the 10-year agreement between Microsoft and Nintendo, but not the various deals Microsoft has struck with Nvidia and other cloud gaming platforms to bring Call of Duty and other Xbox Activision games to rival services. Microsoft's original deal offer to PlayStation in January 2022 included keeping, quote, all existing Activision console titles on Sony, including future versions in the Call of Duty franchise or any other current Activision franchise on Sony through December 31st, 2027, end quote. The deal terms have clearly changed since that opening offer with an extension to 10 years that's limited to just Call of Duty. So this is the game that we talked about PlayStation playing, pardon the pun. So one thing we talked about here on the channel in Defining Duke was that when PlayStation decided to turn down that deal, they were going to block the merger, right? That was their big move. And the risk they ran was that when it came time to sign that piece of paper, if they failed, if the FTC failed, the CMA failed, which we now see is happening in real time before our eyes, they would get less. So instead of getting all of these Activision titles, your Diablos, right? All of the Activision games, Crash, Tony Hawk, Spyro, the list goes on. Now it's just Call of Duty. I don't know if that stings, but when you look at some of the sales, like Insane Trilogy for Crash went over 10 million sales. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1-2 Remake did extremely well. Like, I know we talk a lot about Call of Duty. Diablo 4 is doing fantastic, but Activision has a lot of lucrative IP right now that are going to print money, and there's a chance that in those next entries, they miss out on them. The verdict is still out on how Xbox is going to handle pre-existing IP. We've seen Hi-Fi Rush, Redfall, Starfield all come out in exclusive capacity, but when it came to the Bethesda library, we haven't seen anything that we've already seen before, like a Doom, a Wolfenstein, and so on, come out and be able to kind of do a litmus test of like, all right, what's the exclusivity look like for this? We know that Indiana Jones is going to be exclusive, but that's also new. So same thing with Activision Blizzard. It's like, okay, if a new Crash game comes out or there's a report from Gaming Bible that a new Spyro game is coming around, Will that be exclusive? And my guess would be yes. Certainly now that they gave them the option over at PlayStation, like, hey, you could have these, and naturally it's been turned down. Okay, well, F around, find out, as they say. And so that's exactly what happened here. So this is the new Call of Duty deal that PlayStation signed to at least hold on to it for that stretch of time. The big question is, once those 10 years are up, as I knock my art off the wall practically, is will Microsoft renew it? My concern, if you will, for PlayStation fans is not with the current regime at Xbox, because here's the benefit. We're kind of experiencing, I'd say, the PS4 corporate era for Xbox, though. Remember when there were guys like Sean Layden, Andrew House, like gamers at PlayStation? You could feel that in the products and the things they were publishing. And I feel like there's been a change in focus over at PlayStation, because now with Jim Ryan, you got a bean counter running the whole ship. And with Xbox, you got guys like Phil Spencer, Aaron Greenberg, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, these people who love games and want to keep playing games, even though they're in corporate roles. I worry about a time where some of these people retire and more corporate people, more bean counters, if you will, fill in those slots. And what happens there? Do they get more aggressive down the stretch? And are they able to lock something down like Call of Duty exclusively? I don't know. I don't know if it would benefit them personally, but it's still worth considering. So that's what's going on with Xbox and PlayStation. But now we have Game Pass Core to talk about. This was originally reported by Windows Central Gaming, so shout out to them, but it's now been officially confirmed by Xbox with some new trailers and whatnot. So let's get into some of the information that you need to know about this new offering. And then one weird caveat that Xbox, I imagine, just overlooked, but it makes all the respective other tiers look really weird. So like I said earlier, Game Pass Core is your Xbox Live Gold replacement. If you are a Gold member and you're not subscribed to Game Pass, nothing needs to be changed. It'll automatically transition you over on September 14th. And this goes to the same with Ultimate members. They've already said nothing really changing on that end. It's $60 per year or $10 per month. I found the timing interesting. You know, September 14th, Starfield territory. I don't know. I feel like it's pretty hard to ignore that they're doing all these major shifts and changes around September. I think they're really anticipating Starfield's going to be a massive boom from them. I imagine they're looking at pre-order numbers and saying, like, oh, this is going to do really well for us. So I feel like they're being opportunistic and making some much needed changes. There's more information here, but I'll just say off the rip that I think getting rid of Games with Gold has been long overdue, and Xbox Live Gold long overdue. But there's one lingering thing about it that's kind of irking me, but let's look at what else it includes, which is online multiplayer. Except the weird thing here is that if you look at the other tiers in this image, console Game Pass does not make mention of unlocking online multiplayer, but it's $1 more. So you have the console Game Pass tier, no online multiplayer, but the core Game Pass offering does have it. I imagine this is something that will change. I'd be surprised if it didn't, but I could be wrong. But this was a weird one that stood out to me as a communication error here. And I know the idea with Game Pass Core is to give you almost so little that you buy into the higher tier and leapfrog all the others and go right into Ultimate for just $5 or whatever more bucks, depending on your regional equivalent. But strange there. But this also comes with some Game Pass games. Think of it like PlayStation Plus Collection, but for Xbox Game Pass. So what are those? Well, let's run down the whole list of about 19 games with a few more ready to be announced down the stretch. We are going to be getting Among Us, Descenders, Dishonored 2, Doom Eternal, Fable Anniversary, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Forza Horizon 4, Gears 5, Grounded, Halo 5 Guardians, Halo Wars 2, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, Human Fall Flat, Inside, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Psychonauts 2, State of Decay 2, and Elder Scrolls Online Tamriel. Now, Xbox has confirmed that this library will be expanded 2 to 3 times per year, so this isn't just the only library you're going to have forever. There are going to be more games added to it, which I think is obviously great. But, of course, the thing that stands out to me here, and I know it's their cheapest offering, so I'm not going to try to go too crazy about it, but the offering here is kind of skimp on newer things. Like, even in established franchises, you get Halo 5, you don't get Halo Infinite. You get Forza Horizon 4, but you ain't getting 5, right? And the idea is to entice you to go into that next tier. Not that business realities and understanding them makes it better or okay. But still, that's how I'm personally looking into it. I think it's weird that things like Sea of Thieves aren't there. Maybe they'll be announced down the stretch. but I feel like Sea of Thieves is a pretty ideal one. It's been out for a long while. It's built up a lot. It's one of Xbox's marquee live service games. And so I feel like they maybe benefit from just having that even in the lowest tier. There are some great ones here. I like seeing Fallout 4, Doom Eternal, Fable Anniversary, Dishonored 2, Ori, as well as Psychonauts 2. There's some great ones here, no doubt about it. But like I said, it reminds me a lot of the PlayStation Plus collection, where you're probably going to look at it and go, I'm going to go over here and spend a little extra money. But you do get more value here overall across the board, I feel, than what you'd get with Games with Gold, where they did make some mentions of what's going to happen with Games with Gold titles. So let's say you redeem some through Games with Gold, which they've still been doing. Don't worry, they got you covered. So Xbox One titles will move over to Game Pass Core subscribers so long as they've been redeemed on the same account, and Xbox 360 Games with Gold titles will still be accessible without any subscription required. So as long as you've redeemed them, you'll be well taken care of. So I think overall it's a pretty strong start here. I have things to complain about, but I think, you know, outside of adjusting the online multiplayer and maybe adding a couple of newer-ish games, I'm not saying put Starfield out there. I get it, right? Like, that should be a ultimate offering. But I think a couple of newer-ish ones wouldn't have hurt Xbox too much here. But overall, that's what you need to know about Game Pass Core. So finally here, Xbox Live Gold gone. I remember buying those subscription cards in GameStop and Best Buy. So it's crazy to think those days are behind us, and Game Pass has grown so much that it's now officially swapped out Games with Gold. And we saw the writing on the wall. Let's be honest. We saw Games with Gold was... Some of the games that were being offered, I mean, they were running out of options here. And you could tell the budget was being poured into Game Pass, where they were getting like really sexy day one games. And eventually Game Pass was so powerful, you just had to look at Games with Gold and say, why do you exist? So it's inevitable that this was going to happen. But nonetheless, we still have more to get into here. Let's talk about the CMA doing CMA things. This is politics. They're delaying, and so let's get into a bit of that. So for starters, they've delayed their decision from July 18th deadline, which is tomorrow, to August 29th. Here is their reasoning submitted on the UK's official government website. Quote, the statutory period for the CMA either to accept final undertakings or make a final order currently ends on the 18th of July, 2023. The CMA considers that there is insufficient time remaining in the statutory period for full and proper consideration of Microsoft's submission on the proposed order. As such, the inquiry group considers that there are special reasons to extend by 6 weeks under Section 41A2 of the Act the period for the discharge of its duty under Section 412 of the Act. The revised period will therefore end on August 29, 2023. However, the inquiry group aims to discharge its duty as soon as possible and in advance of this date. So, you know, pushing things back a little bit more. You know, pardon me if I'm reading a little too deep into this, but to me, this kind of reeks a little bit of like, all right, we're a bit salty about how things went. Because let's be honest, after the FTC lost in court, not even an hour afterwards, the CMA was like, all right, you know, we're ready to talk any type of revisions to the deal. We'll happily accept it. What changed, dude? What changed? You didn't lose yet. The FTC did. What changed, right? So to me, I can't help but read into this a little bit more than it may actually be. But Microsoft had been requesting a pause of appeal because they were appealing the CMA's decision, and they were granted that for now 2 months. So this gives both parties time to resolve this dispute, hopefully ahead of the date, August 29th, 2023. This means likely that the deal, I don't know, I don't want to speak too soon because anything can happen. We're all learning on the fly here, I feel. But it looks like this deal won't be closing in time for July 18th as they try to meet the demands of the CMA. What this means is that Microsoft and Activision are probably going to want to renegotiate, and that's actually a report over from Financial Times. What you're seeing is the report from Tweaktown, because Financial Times is one of those ancient websites that's saying, hey, pay and subscribe for our news that's available everywhere else. But I digress. Pretty much what's happening, according to Financial Times, is that Microsoft and Activision are looking to renegotiate their merger deadline. What this would effectively allow is that Microsoft would not have to pay the $3 billion fee, which is going to be fantastic for them, because I know some people are going, oh, you're already spending, you know, $68 billion, almost $70 billion. What's another three? This is where I'm just like, okay, why, when they're getting nothing out of it, would they just piss away that money is beyond me. Of course, the question is, what does Xbox have to give up in order to get this deal across the finish line? We already know the CMA's biggest issue was with cloud gaming. That was all they were focused on. Okay, cloud gaming, got it. So Bloomberg is saying here that the divestiture that could get the deal over the finish line is Microsoft leaving the cloud business in the UK and possibly letting someone such as internet service provider EE operate such a task. I think Microsoft's, we've talked about this before, and it's more apparent than ever. They'll do anything to get this deal closed because now, again, blood in the water. They can see the finish line. They're going to do what they can, and I don't blame them here. I mean, there was definitely the possibility that they were going to close if the CMA was not going to comply. I think they would have closed without them, so that's why the CMA is like, all right, let's see what we can get out of them. And so here we are now waiting. I don't know if it'll be a couple days, a couple weeks. We'll see, but it doesn't look like the deal's closing as soon as we thought it would be, unfortunately. But that's what's going on right now with the CMA. Last thing I wanted to highlight here, Call of Duty backwards compatibility. Numbers are skyrocketing, and the timing couldn't be better if you're Xbox. So right now, Charlie Intel has reported, and these are using in-game player counts, which have been historically buggy in the past and not super accurate, but you can get at least some type of rough estimate. And as of right now, on Black Ops 2, there's 10,000 players online on Xbox 360. And for Modern Warfare 3, God bless y'all going on that game. I'm sorry, I can't stand MW3. 7,000 plus people playing. Apparently, the PC and PS3 versions are still completely broken due to hackers and cheaters. And this is because Activision's been working apparently behind the scenes on these servers and making them easier to find matches. And so people are getting back online. Why is this significant in an Xbox news update? Well, it's because no doubt that when these games get dropped into Game Pass, these numbers are probably going to double and triple. Like, people are going to go back to these older Call of Duty games. They've been looking for that support, been looking for that player base, and like now, skyrocketing big time. So I think if I were to go back to any of them, it'd be Bops 2. Bops 2 and Bops 1, man. Before I did all this, right, talking about like Xbox, Activision, doing game reviews, I was a Call of Duty YouTuber. I was one of those people. I was doing tips, tricks, game battles, competitive gaming. So BO1 and BO2 were sort of where my bread and butter was at. That was like the best part of my career in competitive gaming. I was in BO1 a top 100 player at the time, but that was before like competitive gaming is what it is today, where you could just make like a full salary off of it. So I dropped it, but I've lost my love for it in general and moved on to single player games at the time, because you can actually go and find on this channel, I think the first video in that series was Sly 2, Band of Thieves, one of my favorite games of all time. And I was kind of talking about, yeah, I just want to leave behind multiplayer games and just do single player. Like, it's just boring, stale, repetitive. So I couldn't handle it. I wasn't built for it. Shout out to all the competitive gamers out there. But nonetheless, that's your Xbox news drop for the day. A ton going on here. Certainly more coming throughout the week. We'll see in due time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, please take excellent care of yourselves. Let me know your thoughts on all of this Xbox news in the comments down below. And hey, if any adjustments you have ideas for the setup, I think this should do lighting-wise and, of course, audio quality-wise and backdrop-wise. Well, the picture's been crooked. Should do. Of course, if you have any feedback at all, please just let me know. Other than that, take great care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.